for the amazing drum cadence. Young Wisdom will be using the drum cadence to tell a story of Black history. Throughout this episode, you will hear a representation of our African ancestors by the usage of drums. Drums were used by our African ancestors for storytelling, communications, and celebratory events such as weddings. Drums were even used as a warning to signify danger to others. Today's Young Wisdom episode is titled Black History, Past, Present, and Future. We will be representing Black history by presenting a monologue that represents important figures in African American history. And we will even be interviewing some Black leaders and activists within our community. We hope you enjoy today's episode of Young Wisdom's podcast.
Hello, my name is Jason. Today for Black History Month we will present a monologue. These monologues directly address the life of another person. Our monologues will reflect our past, present, and future African American icons. There will be 4 of our Young Wisdom teams that will portray the American icon. First, Jada will share information about Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was born March 1822 and died March 10, 1913. Next, Philip will discuss Martin Luther King Jr. Mr. King was born on January 15, 1929, and he was assassinated on April 4, 1968. Then Tyler will share information about Barack Obama. President Obama was born on August 4, 1961. And finally, Issa will enlighten information about Amanda Gorman. Ms. Gorman's birthday is March 7, 1998. Some of you may even hear information about our icons that you were once unaware of. So please, enjoy our special segment on our monologue, Black History Past, Present, and Future.
My birth name is Araminta Ross, but you may know me as Harriet Tubman. I was an American abolitionist and political activist. I was born into slavery but escaped. To help others escape, I made about 13 missions to rescue about 70 slaves, including my friends and family. I used the network known as the Underground Railroad. Some other things you may not know about me. I was hit in the head with a heavy metal, and throughout my life I experienced dizziness, pain, and spells. This caused strange visions and vivid dreams I believed from God. During the American Civil War, I served as an armed scout and spy for the Union Army. I was an activist in helping women vote. This is called women's suffrage. I was the first woman to lead an armed war. I guided a raid and freed more than 700 slaves. Some called me Moses, and I never lost a passenger.
I am Martin Luther King Jr., an American Baptist minister and activist. I envision the world where my children not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I led a civil rights movement that focused on nonviolent protest. America came to understand the power of nonviolent protest. When my nonviolent efforts were met with violence, there was compassion and support for the cause. The public shifted, and the major acts of congressional power were set in motion. I was largely responsible for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This act banned discrimination in the workforce and the public accommodations based on race, color, religion, or national origin. I was also responsible for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act protects African Americans' right to vote. I played a major part in the Fair Housing Act of 1968. It stopped banning Black people from housing. My vision of equality and civil disobedience: change the world by changing the lives of African Americans. Although prejudice remains, the tide is shifting where, in a way, the racists of the world are despised and not the innocent African Americans.
My name is Barack Hussein Obama II. I was the 44th President of the United States. I was the first African American President of the United States and served 2 terms from 2009 to 2017. Other facts about me: I am an American politician, lawyer, and author. I previously served as a U.S. Senator and State Senator for Illinois. I was named the 2009 Nobel Peace Prize winner. Our now President Joe Biden was my vice president. While I was president, I signed the Affordable Care Act, mostly known as the Obamacare. I ordered the military operation that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden. Same-sex marriage was legalized nationwide. Evaluations of my presidency places me among the upper tier of American presidents. Since leaving office, I remain active in democratic politics.
My name is Amanda Gorman. I am an American poet and activist. My work focuses on issues of oppression, feminism, race, and marginalization. I have an auditory processing disorder, and I also have a speech impediment. I was the first person to be named National Youth Poet Laureate. I also delivered my poem, The Hill We Climbed, in 2021 at the inauguration of U.S. President Joe Biden. My inauguration poem generated international acclaim, and shortly thereafter, 2 of my books achieved bestseller status. In February 2021, I was highlighted in Time Magazine's 100 Next list under the category of phenoms. Also, in February 2021, I became the first poet to perform at the Super Bowl when I delivered my poem, Chorus of the Captains. In March 2021, I was racially profiled by a security guard near my home. I tweeted afterwards, "He left, no apology." This is the reality of Black girls. One day, you're called an icon, the next day, a threat. But later I tweeted, "In a sense, he was right. I am a threat to injustice, to inequality, and to ignorance. Anyone who speaks the truth and walks with hope is an obvious and fatal danger to the powers that be. A threat and proud. My activism continues."
Hello, my name is Jordan. I would like to introduce to you our panelists. First, we have Ms. Myra N. Richardson, the president and founder of Red Torch Consulting. Red Torch Consulting is a creative consulting firm committed to finding the flame in every brand, business, and organization by using innovative solutions in marketing, public relations, content creation, and strategic planning to help ignite the flames of the future. Ms. Richardson, a native of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, is a 22-year-old political science major at Southern University. She is a renowned activist, both locally and nationally. She is known for her philanthropy, as well as her organizational and business acumen. She has had the distinguished honor of collaborating with every level of government to effectuate change in the community, from previously partnering with the Obama administration to impacting and influencing all levels of local government in Baton Rouge. Ms. Richardson has won national acclaim for her various contributions, including the W. Montague Cobb Lifetime Achievement Award, awarded to her by the national chapter of the NAACP, the Business Report's youngest 40 Under 40 Award, and she has won the Louisiana Youth Ambassador for the Women's March on Washington. Also in her hometown of Baton Rouge, she was the recipient of the A.C.J. Belton Lifetime Achievement Award, awarded for impactful Scotland's advocates. She has had the honor of speaking on national media platforms and being featured in major publications such as CNN, Teen Vogue, TED Talk, the New York Times, The Drum, Essence, BET, Huffington Post, British Broadcasting, WASB, WBRZ, 225 Magazine, and The Advocate. Ms. Richardson's various works include leading protests and influencing policy changes, economic development, eliminating food deserts, health care access, and equity in local communities, as well as other efforts that honor the uplift, the history, and legacy of Black and Brown communities. Welcome, Ms. Richardson. Next, we have Ms. Ada Goodley. Ms. Goodley is the director of the Louis A. Berry Institute for Civil Rights and Justice at Southern University Law Center. She is the owner of the Goodley Group and LLC, where she provides consultation and cultural competency projects, conducts investigatory research for restorative justice cases, and drafts policy with a racial equity. Ms. Goodley serves on the advisory board of Dillard University's Center for Racial Justice, the board of directors for the National Education and Empowerment Coalition, Incorporated, and on the National Civil Rights Council Board of Directors. Ms. Goodley also sits on the advisory board for Historical Injustice in Prison Policing, or HIPP, a trauma-informed training partnership with Northeastern University School of Law's Civil Rights and Restorative Justice Project, and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Ms. Goodley has been instrumental in expanding HIPP training for law enforcement officers in Southeast Louisiana and adapting the training for prosecutors' offices. Ms. Goodley uses her expertise in developing front-end reforms to reduce disparities at all points of contact with the criminal legal system and to help develop community-supported and advocacy-initiated alternatives to incarceration. Ms. Goodley served for 14 years in the United States Army, where she spent time acting as a trainer before committing to advocacy work as an organizer and movement lawyer. She has supported movements with legal coordination and strategy development in the wake of tragic deaths of Victor Wright III, Alton Sterling Jr., and Dewan Dillard. Ms. Goodley has one son who inspires her to continue bringing awareness and fighting for social justice for all people and children of color. Welcome, Ms. Goodley. Our third panelist is Ms. Opal Lee, known as the grandmother of Juneteenth. Ms. Opal Lee was president on June 17, 2021, when President Joe Biden signed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act that established June 19th or Juneteenth as a federal holiday. Ms. Lee said on that day, "Now we can celebrate freedom from the 19th of June to the 4th of July." Ms. Opal Lee was born in Marshall, Texas in 1926. She and her family moved to Fort Worth, Texas in 1937. On June 19, 1939, when Ms. Lee was just 12 years old, her family's home was vandalized and destroyed by rioters. But neither she nor her family allowed that to deter them from making an impact in their community. She has served on many boards and with many organizations, including Citizens Concerned with Human Dignity, or CCHD, Habitat for Humanity, and the Tarrant County Black Historical and Genealogical Society, dedicated to the preservation of the history of the Fort Worth Black Populace. During her tenure as chairman of the Community Food Bank, an organization received the $1.3 million, 33,000 square foot facility as now used to serve 500 families. Ms. Lee is the oldest living board member of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, or NJOF, a national movement started by the late Dr. Ronald Myers to have Juneteenth declared as a national holiday. At the age of 90, she started her walking campaign from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C. to bring awareness to the need for celebrating Juneteenth nationally. She walked 2.5 miles in cities all across the country to represent the 2.5 years it took for news of President Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation to reach and be enforced in Texas, freeing the enslaved. In 2019, she launched an online petition campaign that garnered over 1.6 million signatures to continue the crusade for the holiday observance. Ms. Lee has received 3 honorary doctorates, has been named 2021 Texan of the Year by the Dallas Morning News editorial board, and the 2021 Unsung Hero of the Pandemic. Most recently, she has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Welcome, Ms. Lee, and thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today.
Hello, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Goodley, and Ms. Lee. Young Wisdom wants to thank you for agreeing to be a part of the 4th episode of our podcast. The subject is Black History, our past, present, and future. The Young Wisdom members will take turns asking you questions that relate to your expertise. We look forward to hearing your answers. The Young Wisdom members thank you and appreciate you for joining our podcast.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be here.
Definitely so excited.
Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Richardson. My name is Owen. What do you do as the president of your company?
Thank you so much, Dylan, for that question. So I am the president of my own business, and then I'm the executive director here in Baton Rouge of the Baton Rouge Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce. So within my business, Red Torch Consulting, I oversee all of my employees. I have 17 employees. We do a diverse amount of things within my organization, from marketing and public relations, strategic planning, print. So we do a lot of things that help elevate other companies and brands. And I specifically have an emphasis for Black businesses because that's what I'm passionate about, which is why I became the executive director of the Black Chamber of Commerce here. Within the chamber, we help Black businesses get grants, scale their businesses, grow, get opportunities for higher visibility, and to engage with other business owners. So that's kind of what I do between my 2 roles in an official capacity amongst all the other organizations and businesses that I support and am engaged with.
Thank you. Also, Ms. Richardson, I would like to know, how does activism make a difference for our communities?
That is such a great question, Dylan, because activism is so important, because my mentor, Ada, who is also going to be asking some questions to you guys, or asking some questions from you guys a little bit later, it fosters an intergenerational relationship, right? Like without Ada, I wouldn't be on this call with you all right now. So it's the relationships that were built that weave a stronger community. So I got started in activism when I was 17 years old. And in my community, Alton Sterling was murdered here, and we were able to, affect policy all the way to the Obama administration. We were able to do stuff here locally that still has policy effects and ripples and funding ripples from that day. So between my relationships that I gained with people like Ada, from my relationships that I gained politically and socially, I've been able to do things beyond my age group, because now I'm only 23 years old and have been able to do so many amazing things. And it's with the help of my community that has continuously poured into me. So I think ultimately, like that tragedy, it made my community reflect more on what they could do to become the progressive community they claim to be, and, actually live up to that. So I think it made everyone more self-reflective. It made our community more reflective. And ultimately, it gave us a different path, because had that day not happened, we wouldn't be where we are today, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Goodley. I am Jordan. For my first question, will you explain to us what HIPP training is for law enforcement?
Hi, George. It's great to meet you all. I'm sorry, I talk about HIPP training, and we call it HIP training. And HIP training is a training that is for police departments and also other law enforcement agencies, such as the district attorney's office, public defender's office, and judges. And it stands for Historical Injustice and Present Policing. And the training is created by and composed of historical cases of violence in Black communities across the South. So it's important to have training for officers who are policing communities that have been victim to incidences of racial violence, especially in the Jim Crow South, such as Louisiana. And so that training helps police officers to better understand what these communities have endured and also how to interact with them. And a lot of times police officers, they join a police department and they put on a uniform and they don't realize that with that uniform comes the history of violence with communities. And so this training is a way for us to bridge the gap of that understanding and also allow them to look at intergenerational trauma as a comparison to the direct and indirect trauma that they have to face on a daily basis. So that training, it really humanizes the community for the police officers, and for the police officers, it helps them to better understand, better police, better engage with those communities.
Yes, sir. Also, please tell us what can be done for a positive outcome when police and youth of color come into contact during an interaction.
Oh, wow, that's a great and loaded question. There are, several things that usually have to happen. And the first is for there to be trust between the youth and the officer. And a lot of times, we have a fear of a situation before actually engaging with that other person. And so there's a lot of unknowns. So the first thing that's most important is that you breathe and you try to remain as calm as possible, because you can't think of or react in the right way if you're nervous and if you are thinking about the worst case scenario. So first step is to stay present, stay calm, meaning breathe, making sure that you're checking your body for attention and making sure that you're okay, right? Telling yourself that you're okay and this is going to be okay. And if you approach it with a sense of calmness, you also provide that officer a sense of ease. Officers oftentimes get anxious and they react based off of impressions. And usually those impressions are just of people being nervous, not necessarily guilty. So we don't want anyone to think that, police officers will see your nervousness and understand that you're nervous, but sometimes they'll actually think that you're hiding something. So it's very, very important that you breathe and that you remain calm, not only for yourself, but also to put that officer at ease. The other thing is to just listen and to comply as much as you possibly can. There is, a whole school and a whole, philosophy that we can go into about protecting your rights and letting an officer know that you are aware of your rights so that they don't try to violate those rights. However, we're talking about young people such as yourself. And so I'm not going to give you advice that tells you to let that officer know that you know you're right? Instead, what you want to do is you want to let him know that you're a respectful person by answering their questions. There are a few questions that you have to answer when an officer is talking to you, and that's what your name is, where you live, and what you're doing in a particular place, especially in Louisiana. A lot of people don't realize you actually are required by law to let an officer know what your business is in an area. And so, be friendly and talk to the officer as if you're talking to someone that you respect, like an adult. And I think I want to say that, you should have no issues, right? But that's not always the case. Sometimes you get an officer that's reading your nervousness as guilt, or an officer that's had a bad day and that doesn't believe that, you're of good character. In those situations, there's nothing really that you can say that will change that officer's perception of you on that spot, right? Any altercation that you need to have with that officer, any argument that you need to have in order to clarify your character is not going to take place in that initial interaction, right? That interaction or that altercation needs to take place in a court of law or with adults around, with your parents around. And so you're not necessarily required by law to answer a whole bunch of other questions without your parent or without an attorney. So like I said, you stay calm, you give the basic information that's required by law, and you be as respectful as you possibly can. Outside of that, you're not required to give the officer much more. And you can absolutely say, I'm not required by law to give you any more information. And if you need any more information, we can talk to my parent. And that's when you would want to get either your parent or legal counsel involved as soon as possible. And I'm talking about a worst case scenario. So this is probably not what you're going to encounter as young people, but as you've seen in videos on social media and in the news, that sometimes these interactions can go the wrong way. And so the tips that I'm giving you are really to make sure that you're preventing things from escalating and leading the argument, leading the conflict of a matter of whether you're innocent or guilty to a courtroom rather than an interaction on the street with an officer.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
My question is for Ms. Lee. My name is Journey. I understand that you're a part of the reason that Juneteenth became a national holiday. Will you explain why we should celebrate June 19th and also the process you went through to make it a national holiday?
If you say so. I don't know whether I should make this long or short, but you need to know that there was a Colonel Granger with 7,000 colored troops who made their way to Galveston, Texas on the 19th day of June in 1865 and told everybody they could that the enslaved were free. Now they were working. So he nailed what was called General Order Number 3 to the door of Reedy Chapel, African Methodist Episcopal Church. And when the people came in from work and somebody read that to them, we started celebrating, and we've been celebrating ever since. How about that? But you see, President Abraham Lincoln had written this Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And it's 2.5 years after the news gets to Texas. And there are reasons people give for it not getting where it should have been, but there's no point in going into that. And so here of late, I'm an old lady. I'm 95 now, but I was about 89 or 90. And I wondered what else I could do. I had 4 grown children. I'd retired from a school system. I had worked in my community, but I just felt like there was something else I ought to do. And so I decided if a little old lady in some tennis shoes started walking to Washington, D.C., somebody would take notice. And somebody did. We sent 1,500,000 signatures to Congress, and we were prepared to send that many more when we were called to go to the White House because the president was going to sign it into law. And so I have a book called Juneteenth for Children, and in this book, it shows you where the president actually was signing that bill. I'm delighted that I was part of that. And I want to pass it on to all you young children. So thank you for asking me that question.
You're welcome, and thank you for answering. Yes, I do have another question. Considering your countless years of activism at the local, state, and national levels, what message do you have to share with the youth of color today?
I want the youngsters to understand that if they start something, that they must finish it, come hell or high water. There are going to be obstacles. There are going to be reasons why you shouldn't. But if you start it, be sure you finish what you start. It is wonderful that so many young people are beginning to see the light. And when I say that, they realize what their fathers and mothers and grandparents and great-grandparents went through. And if they don't know it, they should go to their libraries or their textbooks. Lord knows the textbooks need to have the truth in them, and find out what those people went through. And be sure it doesn't happen to us again. That's what I tell the young people.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm delighted that young people are beginning to realize that it's your responsibility to get us out of the quagmire that we are in. And we are. There's so many people who don't have jobs, so many people who are homeless, so many people who can't get health care. Some of us can, some of us can't. So many people who aren't paying any attention at all to climate change. And look what our weather does to us, because we haven't taken care of our earth like we should. And so it's left up to you, young people, to straighten it all up. We know it's a big job, but we know that you are up to the task.
Thank you. This concludes our questions. Ms. Goodley and Ms. Lee and Ms. Richardson, is there anything that you would like to share before we conclude?
I think that what you're doing is fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting us to talk with you. If you need anything else, and if we can be of any service to you in the future, to talk about rights, to go into depth about criminal procedure and things like that, I'm happy to come back and talk with you all again. Thank you so much for having us.
I too am available whenever you ask. I'd be delighted to talk to young people wherever I can. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Our Young Wisdom wants to thank each of you for answering our questions. Your answers have helped us as well as everyone who tunes into this podcast. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. This concludes our podcast.
We hope you've enjoyed your time with us and will join us in continuing to educate others on the importance of Black histories, past, present, and future by sharing this podcast. Thanks for tuning in.